there's people who are listening who are really trying for significant business results. And those results that you delivered over a 25-year period are just they're world class.
We removed the word manager. Everybody was a coach. And a great coach is committed to helping the player get an A. 98 or 97% of people said they respected their coach.
You can either go it alone and do your own thing and just get better and better by yourself, or you can actually have somebody looking into your life and actually helping you get stronger and faster.
In an organization with high employee engagement, there is a high degree of connectivity and belonging.
Hello there, my name is Marc D Braun. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Encouraging Leaders. We're a team of CEOs and senior executives trying to help the business world accelerate growth through the power of building coaching into the culture. I'm here with Garry Ridge, the past CEO of WD-40 and a good friend. 25 years, is that right? How long you were CEO over there, Garry?
25 years, and you're absolutely correct.
And you don't call it retired. What do you call it?
Refired.
I love that. Well, we're here to have a discussion about the power of coaching that we have seen and witnessed in our own organizations, and also some of the challenges that we see in the U.S. businesses and businesses around the world. The first is an acknowledgement that your people right now, every leader and every person inside your organization is either accelerating your growth or they're hindering. There's no in between. There's no like middle ground. They're either driving towards the vision that you have for the future in your business, or they're actually holding the team's growth back. And that is a powerful thing to know. I know whenever I learned that, it was like, holy cow. We're going to look at that through three lenses. One in employee engagement, which you've heard of a lot, wellness, how that impacts it, and also how that type of behavior impacts creativity. And so first on the employee engagement side, both Garry and I have led organizations where employee engagement was high, but across the US, Gallup is one of the most incredible sources of data for that. They do a survey every year, and right now they just did the survey, and 32% of employees are engaged in the average US company. That's the average. Garry, how does that strike you?
It's sad when you really think about it, because most leaders are pretty good, or most leadership teams are pretty good at putting a strategy together. However, the impact of that strategy is driven by the engagement of the people. I use a simple mathematic equation for that. It's so simplistic. We write a great strategic plan. We take it to some smart professor. They mark it up. Congratulations. Your strategic plan is 60 out of 100. Most are 50-50. But if only 30% of your people are going to work every day and enthusiastically executing against that strategic plan, 30 times 60 in my math is 1,800. There's your output. But if 80% of your people are going to work every day and enthusiastically executing against the strategic plan, 80 times 60, 86 are 4,800. So, a lot of people talk about, show me the ROI on engagement. There it is. It's the will of the people times the strategy.
Yeah, it's so good. In that same report from Gallup, I'll put it up here. They say in best practice organizations, that more than doubles to 72%. So if you can just mimic the behaviors, the leadership behaviors in best practice organizations, you can get it up to 72%. World class is actually beyond that. But no matter where you're at in employee engagement, for me, the key is that those engaged employees, like Garry is saying, is driving your business forward. The disengaged employees are actually not just neutral, they're holding back growth. They're impacting it negatively. The second lens I want to look at is wellness. And so you might have heard it as mental health or wellness or whatever the words are, but there's a lot of talk about it. And I believe that the business community is waking up to the impact that wellness has on employee engagement and business results. You can see it here in the data from the American Psychological Association. I just want to show you this. This is stress level by age group, and it's showing a 2019 versus a 2023 segment. Every age category, every decade category over that time period has increased the percentages of people who are feeling high levels of stress. When you have a high level of stress, like it's indicated on this, 8 to 10 level of stress, it is decreasing your quality of life at work and at home, and it is leading to disengagement. Back on Gallup, their finding is that the managers are actually more likely to be disengaged. And it's this pressure that they're feeling. They're overwhelmed with stress. They're feeling it, and it's weighting them down. Tell me, Garry, from your perspective, how important was wellness when you were looking out in WD-40?
Well, I love the way it's described as wellness, because one of the big drivers of wellness is connectivity. And, one of the things that is important to us as human beings is, do we belong? And in an organization with high employee engagement, there is a high degree of connectivity and belonging. It's pretty simple. People want to belong. They want to know they matter. They want to make choices, and they want to learn. They're the four drivers of a great employee engagement. So key factor in this is the opportunity people have to know they're part of something and not out on their own in that isolation. I sometimes think about people in a solitary confinement. They go crazy. That's the other end of bad wellness, I guess.
Yeah. Feeling alone, feeling isolated, feeling like you can't do what you're asked to do. And it drives disengagement. It drives pulling back on the business growth. And so it impacts you, whether you want it to or not. Knowing how to understand the impact thereof is important now for business leaders. And it has always been important, but it's critical as we want to get higher and higher levels of engagement and results. The third lens that I want to look at is creativity. I want to throw up on the slide a presentation about a NASA study. NASA did a study of 1,600 humans. They wanted to know what creativity, how do you unlock the creative genius inside of people? So they studied, it was one of the longest running longitudinal studies, which means they studied 1,600 people when they were 5, 10, 15, and again at adults. And they measured their creativity. The results are astounding. So at age 5, 98% of those 1,600 people actually tested at the creative genius level. They were thinking up new ideas, creating all the time, coming up with new ways to do things. By age 10, that had dropped to 30%. By age 15, to 12%. These are the same people, remember this. By adulthood, when they're in your workforce and mine, it's down to a 2% at the creative genius level. That is astounding. What has happened to those people? They're the same people. And I think about leadership. One of the most critical things I think of as a leader is, how do we build systems that unlock the creative genius inside the people that are already there? Garry, how do you think through creativity, and what do you see from that data?
I go back to one of the biggest stoppers of creativity is fear. And that's why at WD-40 Company, we said we don't make mistakes, we have learning moments. And a learning moment is a positive or negative outcome of any situation that needs to be openly and freely shared with all people. So I think that what happens is, in organizations where there's a high level of fear or a low psychological safety because trust levels are low, then you actually have what I would call a creativity blocker. People just don't get the opportunity to expand their thinking because they're afraid they're going to fail. And in reality, most things do fail. And it's only from failure or, learning, if you will, that we have creativity and new ideas, new products, new systems are born.
I love that. Fear is the heavy driver for lack of creativity. It's a killer. High stress levels are a sign of fear, of failure. They're stressed and underwater. They're feeling that pressure. They're feeling afraid, and they can't be creative. It takes a feeling of freedom and safety to be able to create and innovate. So I want to look at creativity as a third driver for engagement and a third way to look at this. And I want to play a video by Dr. Ken Robinson.
My contention is all kids have tremendous talents, and we squander them pretty ruthlessly. I had a great story recently, I love telling it, of a little girl who was in a drawing lesson. She was 6, and she was at the back drawing, and the teacher said, this little girl hardly ever paid attention. And in this drawing lesson, she did. And the teacher was fascinated. She went over to her and she said, what are you drawing? and the girl said, "I'm drawing a picture of God." And the teacher said, "But nobody knows what God looks like." And the girl said, "They will in a minute." Kids will take a chance. If they don't know, they'll have a go. Am I right? They're not frightened of being wrong. Now, I don't mean to say that being wrong is the same thing as being creative. What we do know is, if you're not prepared to be wrong, you'll never come up with anything original. If you're not prepared to be wrong. And by the time they get to be adults, most kids have lost that capacity. They have become frightened of being wrong. And we run our companies this, by the way. We stigmatize mistakes. And we're now running national education systems where mistakes are the worst thing you can make. And the result is that we are educating people out of their creative capacities. If you think of it, the whole system of public education around the world is a protracted process of university entrance. And the consequence is that many highly talented, brilliant, creative people think they're not, because the thing they were good at school wasn't valued or was actually stigmatized. And I think we can't afford to go on that way. Picasso once said this. He said that all children are born artists. The problem is to remain an artist as we grow up. I believe this passionately, that we don't grow into creativity, we grow out of it. Or rather, we get educated out of it. We have to be careful now that we use this gift wisely, and the only way we'll do it is by seeing our creative capacities for the richness they are, and seeing our children for the hope that they are. And our task is to educate their whole being so they can face this future. By the way, we may not see this future, but they will. And our job is to help them make something of it.
Tell me what you heard him share and how it impacts you.
Again, it comes back to, I think, the real issue around creativity. What do we do to block people thinking in a broader aspect is really the way I think about it. And maybe we do it naturally or unnaturally.
I mean, I think about our business systems and structures and our leadership behaviors. I know that I have wanted to be encouraging, and my behavior has discouraged creativity sometimes.
You and I learned firsthand the power of coaching in an organization and how that drives performance and creativity. The challenge is most people don't know how to coach. And that's really what we bring to the table, right? And, with encouraging leaders, it's coaching all leaders at all levels.
It's actually time to talk about solutions, because I'm feeling the weight. I've felt it before. When you don't have an engaged workforce and you don't have leaders and team members all moving in the same direction, it's a lot of weight on the CEO. And so if you do, it feels incredible. You're watching everything move and you're like, I didn't have to do all of that. They're doing it. It's amazing. And so let's talk about the solution. The first thing I want to do is share another video, actually. This is a video by a health expert. So it's not a CEO. He's a surgeon, but he has made more impact in the health industry because of what he's going to share here with you as what part of the solution to getting everybody engaged, everybody growing, everybody learning. So let's listen to this now.
How do professionals get better at what they do? How do they get great? And there are two views about this. One is the traditional view. That is that you go to school, you study, you practice, you learn, you graduate, and then you go out into the world and you make your way on your own. That's how doctors learn. That's how lawyers do, scientists. Now, the contrasting view comes out of sports. And they say, you are never done. Everybody needs a coach. The greatest in the world needs a coach. So I tried to think about this as a surgeon. Pay someone to come into my operating room, observe me, and critique me. It seems absurd. Expertise means not needing to be coached. So then which view is right? Turns out there are numerous problems in making it on your own. You don't recognize the issues that are standing in your way, or if you do, you don't necessarily know how to fix them. And the result is that somewhere along the way, you stop improving. And I thought about that, and I realized that was exactly what had happened to me as a surgeon. So I asked a former professor of mine who had retired, his name is Bob Osteen, and he agreed to come to my operating room and observe me. The case, I remember that first case, it went beautifully. I didn't think there would be anything much he'd have to say when we were done. Instead, he had a whole page of dense with notes. Just small things, he said. Did you notice that the light had swung out of the wound during the case? Another thing I noticed, he said, your elbow goes up in the air every once in a while. That means you're not in full control. It was a whole nother level of awareness. He was describing what great coaches do. And what they do is they are your external eyes and ears, providing a more accurate picture of your reality. They're recognizing the fundamentals. They're breaking your actions down and then helping you build them back up again. After 2 months of coaching, I felt myself getting better again. And after a year, I saw my complications drop down even further. It was painful. I didn't like being observed. And at times I didn't want to have to work on things. I also felt there were periods where I would get worse before I got better. But it made me realize that the coaches were onto something profoundly important. I think it's not just how good you are now, I think it's how good you're gonna be that really matters.
So Gary, this is the question that I ask after people see that. Your life is on the line. Somebody you care about has to go into surgery. Do you want that guy doing the work?
Well, one of the great things about the work is, how prepared are you? I think they talk about, some of the minor issues and mistakes that are made in surgery that cause unbelievably bad outcomes.
Yes.
Don't you want the nurse to be able to coach the surgeon?
I do. Yeah,
I do.
Yeah, I do. I do too. And I think about surgeons and CEOs, such a high level of skill. So really, really high horsepower, ready to go out and charge the world. And the mistake, you just mentioned it, a learning moment, a mistake that's made by a surgeon could cost somebody their life. CEOs, their behavioral mistakes can cost enormously. And so I think about that relationship, and he was talking about the power of coaching. And he was talking about basically two different options. You can either go it alone and do your own thing and just get better and better by yourself, or you can actually have somebody looking into your life and speaking into your leadership, into your work, and actually helping you get stronger and faster. The coaching effectiveness is not any more questioned. Like, people actually understand this concept. 20 years ago, that word didn't actually exist. But today, the data on coaching and the power of coaching is actually very clear. Coaching drives results. It drives results across the board. I remember feeling this. My first coach I hired was 20 years ago. I started paying him more than I remember making as a new person out of school. And I'm like, this is an amazing investment. And then I was watching the ROI. My team was stronger, I was stronger, and our business results just are flying. We're growing at compounded annual growth rates that never before had we grown. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is paying for itself. This is the way it pays for itself. 3 factors: increases in individual performance, increases in team performance, and increases in overall organizational results. The actual data is a little bit mind-blowing. The data from the results is that the return on investment for coaching is 788%. A 788%, if you put the right coach with a CEO, you can drive a 788% return on investment same year. I want to hear, Gary, what did a coaching culture look like, and what were the results of it at WD-40?
The results, number one, is we had a compounded annual growth rate of total shareholder return of 15% a year. We took market cap from 300 million to way over 3 billion. We expanded to 176 countries around the world. We 6x revenue. But the interesting numbers are really the employee engagement numbers, which are pretty impressive, and they still are in place today. Such high employee engagement. And one of them that is really, really powerful is 98 or 97% of people said they respected their coach. And the reason for that is what I call the coaching contract. We removed the word manager. Everybody was a coach. And a great coach is committed to helping the player get an A. They know the game and what it takes to win. They don't run onto the field to take the ball. They spend time on the sideline watching the play. They add value to the player with feedback on how to improve the play. They never go to the podium and take the prize, and they spend much time in the stinky locker room building trust. So that was the contract. Now, if you are being coached, you agree to accept the feedback from the coach, and you agree at times we might even see feedback from other spectators or players. So this is the whole package that says to the leader, you are here for only one reason. That's to help those that you have the privilege to lead play their best game. Because if each individual plays the best game, the team wins and the results come.
There's people who are listening who are really trying for significant business results. And those results that you delivered over a 25-year period are just they're world class. And people have studied how you did it. I love that then you break the coaching down into a contract and you just talk about both the roles. There's roles for both parties, the coach and the person who's being coached. The other piece that I love you shared sometimes is you decided that, your leadership micromanagement wasn't going to be scalable. Tell me about that.
Well, micromanagement is certainly not scalable. And, if you think as the leader, you're going to run onto the field and kick the ball all the time and take the ball away from the player, number one is you're going to get pretty tired. And number two is the player will never feel fulfilled because you don't give them the chance to score. Micromanagement does not work. It's not scalable.
I remember the decision in my own head that I didn't want to micromanage, but I didn't know how to not do it because I was the one that was doing the work. I was doing it, so I didn't know how not to. And learning how to coach and be coached was the solution that I needed. I needed to be able to understand how to elevate my leadership so that I could coach and develop the team so they could do the work. The weight came off of me, the stress went off, and I gained 75% of my time back. Nobody talks about that part of the power of this, but if you can build a coaching culture, the leadership, you get to go do the next role because your time is freed up. I want to shift to a smaller entity because many of our listeners are privately held smaller companies. So I was leading Cambridge Engineering for the last 13 years. The owner, CEO, was a friend, and he invited me into the business. And they had stagnated growth. They were 75 years old. He had a heart for people. He wanted to build a growth-based business, but he hadn't been doing it. I'm going to talk about the results. So after 13 years, we had a compound annual growth rate of 17%, but it's not as impressive as the cultural work. We went from around 30% engagement to 90+% engagement. And we did that over that period of time. And I want to tell you the source of it. So I sit down with John Kramer, Jr. He's a phenomenal person, human being. And I asked him before I entered, I said, your behaviors as a leader are the things that are driving the results in your business. Are you willing to change your behaviors? And he looked at me, honest as he said, I'll change any of them. Let's go. And he kept on doing that, being coached and developed and changing and adjusting his behaviors one at a time that was getting in the way of the growth. And that allowed me to change mine as the president. And it allowed me to help people change theirs that were getting in the way of engagement. I got to accelerate my growth. So did our executive team. At the end of the 13 years, we had 3 executives all ready for the role of president, and the owner got to choose one of them to take that role. That is what the power of one CEO saying yes to being coachable and then doing next steps to drive that level of engagement across the organization. Here's what Garry and I believe. We believe that coaching, a culture of coaching where every leader at every level is coaching the next team. We have a step-by-step process of doing that as a team. Our team is solid and ready and helping clients today and would love to sit down with you and just have a conversation just to see where your business is at currently, whether it's at 30% or your best practice at 72 and all you want to do is get to world class at 94.
And Mark and I just don't believe this. We were practitioners of this and the results are clear.
Would love to sit down, listen to where you're at and see if we could encourage you in some way. Encouragingleaders.com is where you can find myself, Garry, any of our coaching partners, and would love to set a 15-minute call with you just to understand how we can help. Thanks so much, Garry, for your time, and look forward to the next steps.